presentation today. Thank you, Eleanor.
Hello, good morning everyone. And we're calling it a presentation. That's quite a grand title for my main aim here is to introduce myself and hear from you, really. I want to understand, this is my first kind of proper interaction with Kids First. I want to hear from yourselves about how things are going in Merton and what you think we should be focusing on. But let me, it says I can't share my screen. Tiggy, do you want to press a button? So I do have a few slides, but don't worry, I'm not going to kill you with PowerPoint.
You should be able to share yours. Is it not coming up at the bottom?
It's saying host disabled participant screen sharing. It's not the end of the world if we can't.
Let me see.
If not, I'll just start talking. So
I can do something. You carry on. I'll see.
Absolutely fine. Just let me know. So I'm Councillor Eleanor Stringer. Just a quick bit about me, firstly. So, well, first of all, my responsibilities outside Merton. I work for the Education Endowment Foundation in my day job, which is a charity which funds and evaluates projects aimed at improving outcomes for disadvantaged groups. So we do a lot of kind of advice for schools on how to use their pupil premium, and we write evidence-based guidance reports for schools, and we do lots more besides. I've been there for nearly 9 years now. Over the past year, I've been helping set up a youth employment foundation, which involved a lot of discussion about those groups who are most at risk of youth unemployment, which is often those with vulnerabilities such as having had a special educational needs. I should be able to share my screen now. Is that working? Can people see this? I can take silence as a yes.
Yeah, I can see it, don't worry.
Excellent. So on the right, there's just a couple of examples of guidance reports that I in particular have been involved in. So one about the use of technology in schools and one about developing metacognition and self-regulation. So say I've just been setting up a youth employment foundation. I'm also a trustee of a homelessness foundation. I've got a daughter myself, she's in year 2 in the Merton Primary. Given this as context, I'm also going to very quickly add that I'm not an educational professional, I'm not a teacher, not a head teacher, and my daughter does not have special educational needs herself, so I'm not trying to say I know it all in the slightest. Just one quick plug for an EEF resource. Last month, we put out a guidance report for special educational needs in mainstream schools. It's aimed at SENCOs and senior leaders in schools, but we also think it is relevant for other teachers and for individual parents. These are the headline recommendations that we pulled together, with this based on the evidence, but also with a lot of input from experts in SEND, including parents of children with special educational needs. Normally our guidance reports get a lot of coverage within the education sector. Obviously, with everything going on at the moment, it didn't, so you might not have heard about it. So if you're interested in finding more, just search for EEF and guidance and you should be able to find that. Within Merton, I've only been a councillor since 2018. I represent Abbey Ward, which is where I live, which is around South Wimbledon. Since May 2019, I've had responsibility for schools and adult education, where my priorities have been ensuring that we are focused on raising the attainment of underperforming groups, addressing our performance and budgetary issues within the SEND provision in particular, ensuring that school voices and successes are heard. And I've, particularly towards the end of last year, was starting to try and do some work on helping to coordinate our skills and employment work for vulnerable groups. When I was starting to work on that from the adult education world, and also a bit within the kind of economic well-being world, I was realising there's lots going on, but it isn't very kind of well coordinated. And I think that could be particularly relevant for pupils with SEND who are leaving school. I've only been covering children's services since this month, so I definitely won't have all the answers to all your questions on wider SEND issues. This is a very boring slide, but this is just the full list of responsibilities that I have as of this month. So it is everything from the statutory role as lead member for children through to kind of transitions, and youth services, and yeah, there's a whole range of responsibilities that I'm getting my head around, and that I'd love your support in getting my head around. So in terms of the key Merton priorities, the first thing to note is that supporting SEN pupils is and should be a top priority for us, not least because we've got high numbers of children with high levels of needs. So the stats I've seen suggest that 3.7% of Merton pupils are in the HCP versus around 3.1% nationally, which looks like a small number, but the percentage difference is actually quite significant. And it's not just the numbers, it's the fact that these are some of the most vulnerable children and young people in our borough. So we have to be enabling them to thrive and giving them the additional support that they need to thrive, just as we want for all of our children. You will be aware, hopefully, of the SEND strategy that was approved recently and that Kids First played a crucial role in, I gather. And SEND issues are also crucial in our children and young people's plan. We are still working on addressing issues raised by the Ofsted inspection, which was last summer, wasn't it? Because it was when I'd just taken on cabinet responsibilities for education. So I've just reminded you of the kind of headline areas that Ofsted picked up on. And so we're having kind of formal action planning and updates and reports on that back to Ofsted and the CQC, I should say. In better news, we lobbied for and got approval for this financial year, increased funds for some work in this area, so particularly around educational psychologists and additional SEN case officers, and some around transport. There is a big but coming there, because there is still an overspend on some other areas of our budget. So the dedicated schools grant, which doesn't go through the kind of main council books, but which we, well, a tiny bit does, but most of it goes direct to schools for high need support. We've got a huge overspend on. Other councils do as well, but ours is particularly big and has grown. And so we do have to pay attention to how we are going to try and recover that overspend with the DfE. I put that in quotes because it's, with the current funding agreed by the DfE, it seems, yeah, all but impossible to recover. But we are looking at things that we can do, like expanding local authority run special schools. And we have also just for this financial year agreed to look at improvements in the efficiency of how we commission transport and short break services. We haven't started thorough work on those yet, so that's something that will be coming up this year, and we will have working groups on that, which we will definitely want be working closely with Kids First in. That's all that I'm going to kind of do transmission talk about you on. I want to hear your views. It was already mentioned kind of raising specific personal issues. This might not be the appropriate forum. If you have any specific individual issues, do drop a line to sen@merton.gov.uk. But on anything else, we can discuss it now, or I'm very happy for you to contact me outside of this meeting. That's my Merton email and my personal number, which is the kind of number I use for all of this work. And I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with you. Thank you. So, shall I start looking at the Q&A? What's the best way of doing this?
Yes, let's have a look. Sorry, I'm just coming back online. So yeah, we have a couple of questions by the looks of things. Yeah.
Hopefully more will come in.
Okay. That first one about cuts. Are there going to be lots of cuts to SEN services because of funding problems caused by coronavirus, and from what areas, e.g. short breaks? So I mentioned short breaks just then. That is very much separate to anything that's going on now. We haven't done a review of our short breaks commission for many, many years. So it just needs to kind of look at, to check, are we getting the right quality and the right support to the right people who need it? And yes, for the right cost, but it's more about making sure that we are getting the right services. That first question, I'm really worried about it, to be honest, because I can't remember how much of this is public, but coronavirus is costing the council a lot of money and an awful lot of lost income as well. And the government initially said that council should do everything they can and that they will be reimbursed for that. And then Robert Jenrick, the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, they'd started to row back on that. And they said that they'd only give us money for the things that they'd explicitly asked us to do. and additional things that we had done, or kind of income that we've lost because of government guidance that they wouldn't be giving us. So I'm really, really worried that we've just had a whole long period of austerity, and we're just starting to see some, you know, I've just managed to get an extra few £1 million of funding for this department, and then we could be entering another era of austerity. So yeah, my honest answer is I'm quite anxious about that, not just about SEN services, but generally cuts to kind of local authorities funding could be coming in future years. All I can promise to do is to make the case for why we need to invest still in children's services and education generally, but particularly those for young people with additional needs. Sorry, that's not a very inspiring answer. Then there's a question about, am I made aware of key issues arising from the issues log? So I speak to Jane McSherry, the Associate Director for Education, and Carla Finnegan, the Head of Special Education Needs at Merton, regularly, and they do raise at a generic level some of the issues coming through. I haven't seen a kind of an anonymous list of what's coming through on the issues log, and I'd be really interested too if that would be possible.
Yeah, I could definitely arrange for that to be sent to you. Just to let you know, prior to this meeting, I did send quite a long email to Eleanor, just giving her a brief rundown of what we do, what we've been doing over the last year, where all our parent representation work is, and an example of the issues that we see cropping up time and time again, for example, in terms of preparation for adulthood and transition planning, lack of therapies named in the HCPs. So I provided a brief overview, but I haven't shared the issues log, but we can certainly do that. Yes, definitely.
I was just thinking that actually I did massively overlook that in my presentation, which I knocked up quite quickly, sorry, is yeah, I'm well aware that preparation for adulthood is a priority issue, and it's not one, bluntly, because I didn't have to pay attention to it when I was getting my head around education last year. It's a new one to me, and it's one that I do want to get my head around. So I've looked at the kind of the Merton Council scrutiny report on this, and I know there's an action plan going alongside that they're working on. But if people have views on that, I'd be really interested to hear about them. And there's a question about the transport review. Has it been published? No. So yeah, so even I don't. So there's been some like internal review where that was commissioned across not just education but across Merton more generally, and it wasn't even a full review. I think we just got a consultant to kind of start to give us some start to take a look at it. If we do a proper review, we are planning to do a proper review, and then there will be the chance to hear from all stakeholders. So we will definitely want your input into this. And it is about, your second sentence is, will this input into the transport budget efficiencies? Yeah, I suppose the thing to emphasise is that it is about, or the way I'm seeing it at least, is it is about efficiencies rather than kind of cuts. It's about doing what's right, like I say, getting the right services to the right people at the right cost.
Yeah, just to add to that, we have at Kids First, we fed into that general transport review, and we have been assured that Kids First will be consulted about any future changes going forward. So I'm hoping that we'll be consulted once work on that starts again.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Because like I say, as far as we're concerned, it hasn't really started. What's gone on so far is just the kind of foundations. Really interesting question here about, do we know how SEN children will be supported with transitions if you're going into secondary school during this coronavirus crisis? And I'm aware that this is a period of anxiety for many parents, myself included, but particularly those whose children are transitioning, and particularly those who have additional needs. My understanding is that, as ever, it's about what is right for the pupil. And so it's about speaking to the your case officer and your school and understanding, is it appropriate for this child and young person to resit a year, or if they are able to carry on, what additional support will they need during secondary schools? What I am very reassured about is apparently all the secondary schools are well aware of this issue. Like I say, they even non-SEN year 6 children will have missed out on a huge chunk of this period, which is normally dedicated to transition. So secondary schools are already thinking about how can they make the year 7 experience in autumn as welcoming and inclusive as possible. And things will depend on, you know, what the situation is then about class sizes and things as well. But I don't think any secondary schools have any answers to that, but I think I can give you assurance that it's high up on their list and they are considering it. And then a similar question about increase in mental health problems due to what's going on and how this might get worse, and how children with SEN and their carers are really struggling. I'd be interested in your ideas about how to tackle that. You know, part of the policy of letting kids with EHCPs continue to attend school is, I think, trying to address that well-being point from both the pupil and their parents or carers. But we also know that's not right for everyone, and recognise that's not enough. So if I'm honest, I don't have a kind of answer for kind of what specifically is going on to make that happen. Tracy, I don't know if you've got any input or any thoughts.
The only thing that I could add to that is there are services out there that offer support online for mental health issues. One of them is Talk Off the Record, who came and did a session for Kids First before lockdown, which are an excellent service, and they offer counselling for children and young people, and their services are now available remotely online. In our Kids First newsletter, we're going to be covering some various organisations that you can go to if you are suffering with mental health issues. So, and that will be circulated soon.
Thank you. There's a question about the clarification of my role. It's all people with EHCP, so not just up to 18. So similarly, on the looked after children side, if they have entitled support up to 25, so that's still within the Children's Schools and Families Directorate within Merton, and that's the same for those with EHCPs. But obviously then when they transition to adult care, or if they cease having an EHCP, then they're no longer within my responsibility. So it does cover things like college, and I've just been about to go and have a proper meet with the principal of Merton College just before, just as lockdown was hitting, which is really frustrating because I wanted to get to know them better. So I've only visited their adult education work before. Employment and lack of local opportunities when raised a lot of the preparation for adult board, and the lack of vocational planning in schools and colleges. Will Youth Employment Foundation work be considered in Merton? Yes, so I can't guarantee that the charity that I've been helping to set up will specifically be working with Merton. I can make sure that the resources and things that it's produced are kind of shared within Merton. What I'm hoping to do personally is share some of the learning that I've been taking from visiting. For example, I went up to Greater Manchester Combined Authorities, doing some really interesting work on trying to coordinate their youth employment offer and get it to the right young people who need it and bring in the employers. And I'm interested in learning from that work and bringing that to Merton. A lot of that work isn't actually best done at a borough level. It is best done at a kind of either regional, cross-London or sub-regional level, because I don't know how many of you work in the borough that you live in, but you know, not many people do. So it's about finding the kind of right opportunities at Merton. And we've got a brilliant small team called Towards Employment, who do, even during this coronavirus crisis, have been doing great work in finding opportunities for some of our young people who are NEET, so they're not in education, employment and training, and getting them in those. And I'm not sure at the moment how much work they do with young people with SEND, and that's one of the things I'm interested in, is looking into that and trying to improve that. I've also been to visit Project Search in St George's. I don't know how many of you are aware of that. This is a project that was set up by Celia Dawson from Cricket Green, where about, I think it's about like 8 or 10 young people aged between normally about 18 to 22 spend a year at St George's doing, getting some kind of classroom style input from Cricket Green teachers for part of the day, and then spending part of the day doing real life work placements in various bits within the hospital, so cafes and reception and the digital team and the filing team. And it gets, and then they've got their great success of then finding real jobs for those young people. And I think that's an absolutely tremendous project. I give that all my support. I'd be interested in other examples of supported internships in other parts of the borough. It's a question about children awaiting needs assessment who are currently not in school, and how will they be assessed? So I've been checking up on this because I was worried about this. And my understanding is that these assessments are still going on where possible. Obviously, the delays are where, for example, you know, the school isn't, the school might be being slow at submitting some evidence, and other partners might be being slow at submitting evidence. But my understanding is that the assessment process should be ongoing. Tracy, I don't know if you know otherwise.
I don't. We had our parent reps attended a meeting on Wednesday with Carla Finnegan, Head of Sendis, and James McSherry, Assistant Director of Education, and I'll be catching up with those reps to get an update on what was discussed at that meeting, and things like that probably were discussed at that meeting. So I need to catch up on that.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it again. Who are currently not in school?
Someone's just commented saying, yeah, it should be ongoing at the moment. Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously, inevitably, there will be delays. I've been looking at different things. There's a Q&A and there's a chat. Somebody in the chat had asked to see that full list of responsibilities. So let me just quickly get that up, and I'll go to the other questions. There we go. Can you see that screen? I mean, I have a mind on heart attack when I look at this list. Can you see that?
Yes. Are you happy for us to share this PowerPoint presentation?
Definitely.
With
I'll send it through later.
Yeah, so we will share this, so you'll get a copy anyway. But it's a long list.
It's a long list, and so I do have to be strategic on. I see my role as cabinet member as, which has probably talked more about this in the introduction. I'm not an officer. I'm not paid by Merton to kind of do assessments of children with SEN or be a social worker. I see my role as helping to kind of understand the statutory responsibilities we have, understanding the kind of resourcing that we have, and setting a kind of strategy and direction for how we should be operationalizing, well, the strategy for how we should be achieving those. And then it's up to the kind of lead officers to then operationalize that. But I also see my role of kind of spotting where there are inconsistencies or gaps or things that could be kind of better coordinated. And a big part of my role is kind of political lobbying, so kind of just trying to get more funding for the area is one, but also kind of being a voice for schools, for pupils and young people, for parents and carers of children involved in the care system, or children with additional needs. So whilst these are the kind of formal things, like it's for me, it's a kind of cross-cutting responsibility across all of these to maybe not have a incredibly detailed understanding of all of the SEN code of practice, but I happen to know a bit about that because of my day job. But that's not the point. It's about understanding how it works and if it's working for the people that we're here to serve. And there was another question I was going to go back to about. It needs to be made clear that, oh yeah, because we have survived this, it doesn't mean carers and children don't need all the support and help they can get, and that we're holding on. Yeah, I hear that loud and clear, and yeah, I think the same goes for many families at the moment, and people in different circumstances are facing different challenges, but those who've got children with additional needs at home, who are also often trying to hold down the job and try and look after other children and homeschool and so on. It's an incredibly stressful situation, and the kind of lack of certainty about what's happening next, and the ongoing anxieties about when is it best for further opening up to happen, isn't always helpful. And then a question about how the majority of children are being homeschooled and the guidance is lacking on the 1st of June return. Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, the guidance for special schools hasn't even been released yet for their extended return, which is just baffling. In Merton, we're very much taking the view that we're supporting head teachers and governing bodies to make the decisions that are right for them and their pupils. And so just today was hearing about some who don't think they will be going back at school on the 1st of June because they want a whole extra week of preparation or training, and then we'll be going back in a kind of phased way the week after. I've heard of others who do think that they can open from the 1st of June, but normally with a kind of couple of days of teacher training first, and then with certain year groups within the ones that government have said, but they're kind of picking the year groups that they think work best for them. Yeah. So I've been kind of scrolling down this. Does that work, or have some questions been going up?
No, I think.
Yes, I think because some people have liked the questions.
Yeah.
That's when it moves.
They've jumped to the top. Yeah.
Okay. I should have been saying. I should have been clicking how I answered them. Not doing this very well. Anyone spot
them, I think
ones that you don't think I've answered so far?
I think you've answered most of them.
And there was a specific additional question there about moving from college placement onwards, and that was when I tried to answer that question about transition. That's when I was talking about that particular issue around, for example, resitting years. I think that is especially relevant to those who might be doing a college course and they've only done a few months. It might only be a short college course. They've only done a few months of it. Would it be most appropriate for them to kind of resit it? We just need to work out what is right for those young people.
There's one at the bottom of the list, Eleanor, about the financial impact of COVID-19.
Yeah. I am really worried about the financial impact. The only thing that I'm hopeful for is, even if there is a financial impact, I hope in a sad way, because this crisis has revealed how unequal people's lives are, hopefully it will be easier to make the case for, look, there are some groups that do need additional investment and additional support. So that could be, I would argue, both those who are more kind of economically disadvantaged, or those who are doing kind of frontline jobs, but also those who have particular additional caring responsibilities do need additional support. So like I say, the only promise I can make is that I will be a voice for SEN children and parents of children with additional needs. We don't know, we don't have any certainty yet. Every day we're getting updated budget estimates on how much we think this is costing us and how much we think we might get in, and then the government will do an announcement that looks big, but then when you divide it by the councils and work out how they've weighted it, it looks like we're not getting as much as they want. So we're not going to get any certainty on this for a little while. But the good news, the thing I should have re-emphasised, is that the additional funding that we had just got agreed just before lockdown for this financial year was, for example, for additional SEN case officers and some educational psychologists, and the recruitment of those is going ahead. So that, those are posts that we have funding for. We are going to have additional bodies in the team, and that's to address things like, we know that not all annual reviews were kind of taking place as regularly as they should, and we know that each case officer just had such a large number of children with EHCPs that they were dealing with, that they weren't able to kind of always respond as personally as we would like them to. So additional case officers will really help with that, hopefully.
When have those positions been advertised for yet? Do you know, Eleanor?
I think they have, but I'll check. Let me see if I've got. So I specifically asked that question because I was worried about it being delayed. Yeah, we are actively recruiting at the moment.
Okay.
5 EHC coordinators, 2 apprentices, and 2 educational psychologists. Oh, and apparently, yeah, I'm just checking on the email from Carla. Apparently, she is going to be sending Kids First a new structure chart later this week, then to disseminate to your members.
Great, yeah, because we've been asking for that for some time, so we'll probably include that in our newsletter as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I should probably mention that we are working on our next issue of our newsletter, and as you know, the local authority always contribute an article to our newsletter, so we're just waiting on the LA to send that to us. So there will be an update in our newsletter from the local authority. There's also, for those of you who haven't come across it yet, there is also a COVID-19 page on Merton's SEND local offer, which has got some useful information on it and some updates on government guidance and some ministers' letters. And I'm sure that you'll probably have seen that on all the usual websites like IPSI, SOS, SEN, Special Needs Jungle, and many others, they're all posting updates and government guidance and all sorts of useful information. So it's worth checking all those websites out. And also Carla and probably some colleagues will be attending one of our webinar sessions in June as well to give us all an update. That is on Thursday the 25th of June, so they're coming to that to give us an update. So
okay, yeah. I've just a few more questions have just come through, so a particular one about helping families that have not done home education because of SEN and getting the young person back into school. Yeah, I think schools were slow to realise. No, I think schools have done brilliant work on home education, but I don't think there's been a huge shift, and I know lots of parents have struggled. I've been looking at some of the national research on this, and there's huge variation in the amount being done, that varies both by kind of socio-economic background, but also will vary by additional needs. I suppose with a personal level, that you contact your school, because it is their role to support you to access education. So if there are any particular things that they can do to make it easier, I would raise that with them. I've been worried if some are dropping out of school. That's a big concern, and I'd be happy to pick that up offline and find out more about that and try and address that case. What LBM boards or panels do I sit on? Do you know what? Now that I'm responsible for children's services, absolutely loads. So the main one is I'm scrutinised by the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Panel. So that's where backbench councillors can come and ask questions of what's going on in the department. I was already attending that one while responsible for schools, and then now I'm responsible for children's services as well. At the moment, those scrutiny meetings aren't happening. We're just having a kind of overall council scrutiny meetings happening, but I hope they'll get back soon. There's health and wellbeing boards, there's corporate parenting board, there's children's trust, there's definitely going to be some that I'm forgetting. Oh, violence against women and girls group. There's lots of different ones that overlap with this area, and I'm going to initially, when they all start going, try and attend as many as I can, and then work out where strategically I best want to put my efforts and want to make sure I attend. Oh, and I mentioned earlier the economic wellbeing group, which I think is, whilst you might not be aware of, I think it's actually a really interesting group which brings together employers and colleges and training providers and Merton Council and charities providing training and skills employment, and talks more broadly about how we get people into employment and business opportunities within Merton. And I think it's a brilliant group chaired by Naomi from the Common Side Trust, if you know her. And I'm going to try and make sure that they're paying attention to the needs of vulnerable young people when thinking about their opportunities. And there's a question about job descriptions and the structure charts. When we get that from the officers, yeah, I'm sure we can share kind of what the responsibilities are. A question now going off, I'm doing some raw builder. Are you aware of short break direct payments are able to be used more flexibly because parents have not been able to use them due to COVID? I'm going to be very honest and say I don't know the situation with that. I'm very happy to look into that for you, unless Tracy or anyone else knows the answer. So it's how directly can it be used?
To use more flexibly as parents, not being able to use personal assistance or respite carers due to COVID. So I don't know the answer to that, and I'm sure that would be something that will come up in the short breaks review, but it would be good to get an answer to that before the short breaks review starts, because we don't know how long it's going to be delayed.
No, and I think this is a bit different actually, because this is about like now, and if there's kind of unused direct payments. So I'll take that away and I'll try and come back to Kids First and Tracy with an answer.
Thank you.
Use more flexibly. I might copy that one. What do councillors read into the need for reasonable efforts to be made? Is that about kind of reasonable adjustments for children with SEN in schools? Just before I answer, so I can check and understand. How would you understand that question, Tracy?
Sorry, I was still trying to find the other one, but it's disappeared. Sorry.
they move around.
Yeah. Which one is that one you're asking me about?
This is from Jane at 11:07. What do councillors read into the need for reasonable efforts to be made?
I think they might be referring to the new Corona bill and the reasonable efforts concerning education, health and care plans. And
well, okay, so you know, at the moment we're trying to do as much as we can. Early on, if I'm being honest, early on we were pretty worried about how coronavirus would impact on some of our services. We were worried that we could have large numbers of our staff off sick, for example, at any one time. But because we did that lockdown quite strictly, quite early, not the country, but in terms of Merton staff did, you know, when they had to, they went home and have been working from home. We haven't had like huge amounts of sick or anything like that. So we've aimed to continue to deliver the service as well as we possibly can. So I think that the Act was there in case, you know, had we had 30% of sick, then we might have had to say that, you know, the huge delays would have been allowed, would have been permissible under the Act, but nobody wanted that to happen, and we've managed to avoid that happening so far. But again, if there are specific cases where you think that, yeah, we haven't done what we haven't made the reasonable efforts or reasonable endeavours, is it? I'm just checking up the other guidance I've got. Then let me know. And my understanding is, does that Act kind of run out at some point as well?
It is a temporary thing, yeah. I haven't got the paperwork in front of me, but there are specific periods in which it relates to, and I'm hoping that the Kids First steering group have actually been in touch with Carla Finucane about reasonable endeavours, and we're hoping that she is going to be providing some communication for parents and carers of families of children and young people with SEND, and obviously we'll be circulating that as soon as we receive anything. Or she, and also we're hoping that the local authority are going to be contacting families directly as well.
Right.
But we're waiting for an update on that at the moment.
Yeah. And yeah, thank you for all the clarifying what you meant by that on the chat. It feels like the world that we know has fallen apart. How will the council take SEN services forward in the new world? So there's a couple of things, you know, there's the how we fulfill our kind of statutory role, and there's how we implement our ambitious kind of SEND strategy, which kind of goes beyond that. And it is going to be a challenge. I think it all depends on kind of how quickly we can get some of our education services back to normal. I'm hoping that there will be some, well, there will be huge financial issues, but I hope there'll be some good things that come out of it. I hope there'll be more opportunities for kind of parent voice and student voice and people voice coming from better online communications. I hope that's something that, you know, we've now realised that we don't need to book a big room and try and get, you know, pay a couple of £100 for it to get everyone together. We need to question me, we can do more things like this. It is going to be a challenge. Like I say, I'm using this. I'm going to be using this as an excuse to kind of redouble our efforts on making sure our services are aimed at the most disadvantaged children and young people in our borough, which includes children with SEND, because they're the ones who will have suffered most from this, and they're the ones who need most support during a recovery.
There's a question there about how do the scrutiny panels ensure?
Yeah, okay, yeah, so like I say, so that, and this is one of those complicated ones where that report on preparation for adulthood was requested by not the children and young people's scrutiny panel, but the health and well-being one. And I think actually, yeah, it should have sat more across both, because it's up to the kind of health and well-being board to then hold to account on what happens with that. So there were a clear set of actions that came out of that report, which the council is kind of working through. I don't have the detail to hand on what those were and where we're at with them, but I'm really keen to find out more about our work on preparing for adulthood. So I'm happy to look into that, and we could do kind of an additional session focused just on that and an update potentially if necessary.
Yeah, we are hoping that before lockdown, we had a session on preparation for adulthood and transition planning with Carmen Gardier from Adult Social Care and Carla Finnekin, and they did promise that they would come back and do another update session. So I've been liaising with them, and they have said that they will come back, but it's not likely to be until the end of June, beginning of July, and I haven't got a date confirmed for that session yet, unfortunately. But I know that our reps that sit on the preparation for adulthood board are very keen that the actions from the report are followed up, because they do, all the issues that were raised do match with issues that have been raised by our parents and families on our issues log. So
brilliant. I think those are all questions that I'm not going to say I've answered, but I've at least responded to.
well,
I'm really happy.
We've got a little bit of time, so if there aren't any other questions that you want to submit via this Q&A function, we can take some questions from people individually and unmute you if you have any additional questions that haven't already been asked.
Or if you've got better answers to the questions than I gave, and I'm really interested to hear your views.
Yeah, definitely. So
okay. I have two questions that were sent to me from a parent who couldn't attend. I don't know whether if I can sort of ask them and get a response to her.
Yeah. So
the first one was that our member, she's a key worker. They have a son who's in year 4. He's got an ASD diagnosis, so with his anxieties and a need of familiarity, I don't want to put him into a key worker scheme at his school. Where does she stand in terms of her rights? Could you answer that, or I don't know if it's in...
So is it a mainstream school that he currently attends?
I think so, yeah.
My understanding is, yeah, the only place that you are eligible for your education place will be at where you are on the roll, so it would be at that school. But I mean, I'd urge her to speak to her case officer and the head of the school, outlining why she has concerns and why she thinks he would benefit from education outside the home, but what additional support he's needed, and I suppose obviously specifying how that's consistent with what's in his EHCP if he has one.
Okay, and then the second question was, Is there a huge backlog of EHCPs applications because of the coronavirus, or should I continue my application as a parent?
Definitely the latter. We think, you know, there could be some that, like I say, are taking longer, and that is allowed in the Act at the moment. But I'm not aware of it's stretching out rather than a backlog as such. So I would say, yeah, definitely continue with it.
Thank you.
You should be, and what I've been assured is that the council is keeping parents informed about any issues or any delays, so you shouldn't be kind of left in the dark about what's going on.
Okay. I think we got one question come in on the Q&A while I was...
All about the autism strategy. Again, so yeah, again, my slides that I whipped up quickly, and I realised I didn't mention the preparation for adulthood work or the autism strategy, and there's a wee bit where we did the autism strategy first and then the SEND strategy and the children and young people's plan, and there is I for a start want to get my head around how they work together, but my understanding is there is similarly kind of action planning going on from that. Very happy to kind of go away and look into detail and come back with more of a question on that. And is there a whole separate group for parents with children with autism? If I understood that correctly.
We have a parent forum called Talk Autism.
Okay.
But at the moment we're not running any sessions specifically for Talk Autism. We're trying to combine Kids First sessions with the Talk Autism sessions. We do have actually a couple of parent reps who sit on the Autism Strategy Board, and we're waiting for a date for the next meeting, so hopefully we might have some more information following that meeting. Okay.
And just because, you know, obviously autism is one of the areas of need that is one of the biggest drivers of the increase in SEN in Merton. So it is a big priority for us. So it did make sense that we have a kind of standalone strategy for that, and also a strategy that goes beyond just children and young people. But I'd be really keen to. I don't know if formally I'm on that board, but I might try and come along and sit on that and listen in if that's okay.
I think it looks like we've answered all the questions. So, does anybody else have any other questions that they would like to ask that we haven't covered already? And I can unmute you. If you want to use the raise hand function, if you have a question, and we can unmute you so that you can ask your question. Melanie, your hand is raised, but it's been raised for quite some time, so, oh no, your hand is now not raised.
Melanie seems to be the one who knows the detail about the COVID Act, so maybe she was trying to correct me when I was saying something wrong.
Yeah.
Thanks for putting that in the chat.
We had one question come in on the Q&A.
The carer strategy, and has it been finalised? I don't know the status of that. I'm going to be very honest.
I think for the Adults First newsletter, one of our Adults First steering group members has been attending meetings about the carer strategy, and she will be providing an update in the newsletter that will be going out later this month or the beginning of next. So the next newsletter we send out is actually going to be a joint Kids First and Adults First newsletter, because so much of the information in each newsletter is relevant to both forums. So there will be an update in the next newsletter from our from an Adults First steering group member with regards to the carer strategy. Would anybody else like to submit any other questions, either via the Q&A function or verbally?
all I can say, I will share the slide so you'll have my contact details afterwards if you don't want to, yeah, if you want to follow up separately.
You got one? How can we Kids First help you with information?
Yeah, I was just, I Joe, that's really funny because I was just thinking, do I get the Kids First newsletters or not? I'm not sure that I do. Now, and
we send our newsletter to all councillors.
Oh, okay, there
so you should have received it, but
I'll check if your name's
we'll
on.
double check our list.
No, I may well be that I get them, but I get a lot of things that come through as kind of, you know, round robins, often not kind of flagged in my inbox. So I'll make sure I look at those. Yeah, available. Yeah, I know about the local offer because I think the information flow is absolutely crucial on both sides. It shouldn't just be me coming saying this is what I think. It's got to be about us hearing from you. But then chatting to Jane and Carla this week, they said that they've realised that they're then rubbish at then going back to Kids First and saying, oh, actually, we have done some things on the back of some of the issues that you've raised. So often it says, you know, an issue might be raised about inconsistency in school plans or something. They'll go off and start to speak to all the schools about it, but won't report back that actually they have taken it on board and they are doing something. So I think we do need to make sure that that flows both ways. I'm in regular contact with Jane and Carla, but as I said earlier, you know, I'm not the one writing the operational plans and kind of managing the teams. So for me, it'll be a kind of more strategic level. But really happy to think about other ways that we can get the information flow to well.
Yeah, because our parent reps, the meetings that our parent reps have with Jane and Carla are really crucial meetings. Actually, we meet with them once a term. So yeah, it's useful to know that you that they are feeding back to you from those meetings and that you're getting a sense of some of the issues that are being raised. But as we said at the beginning of the session, we're happy to send you. We can send you our anonymised issues just to give you an idea of the sort of things that families are raising.
Yeah.
Following this session, but
that'd be really useful. Sorry.
Yeah, and where we have representation, we take issues to all of those different meetings. So I think I sent you a list of all the boards and forums that we attend. So we take the issues that are relevant to each individual board to those meetings.
Yeah, so, no, you're involved in a lot, and that's good. But we also need to make sure that then I can help to also be a voice. Also help with that information flow if I'm attending.
Yeah, because the communication, like you said, is key. If we can hear back from the local authority about where they have addressed those issues and maybe resolved some things, because and then we can share that with our members as well.
Yeah.
And just to urge everyone as well that's listening today to share your issues with us, because the more you tell us about your issues or your experience with statutory services, the more that we can help at Kids First by highlighting the issues that families are facing with the relevant officers and the people that need to hear about them. So.
Someone's just put it on the Carla and Nick said they send a list of FAQs, parent queries. Yeah, they're definitely doing that. Carla mentioned that to me just yesterday. So that is on its way. And I'm really happy to come back and do this again. You know, particularly given that on the children's services side, I'm only a month into, a couple of weeks into the job really. So I'm happy to come back later in the year and talk to you again.
Oh, thank you. That's a lovely offer, Eleanor. We will definitely take you up on that offer. And we really appreciate you joining us today, given that you're so new to the role. So we do really appreciate it. Oh, is there another question?
A couple of final questions I've just seen. So one's about the Autism Strategy Board. That's useful. Thank you.
9th of June.
And then one about fighting hard to get SEM recognised and then get their help for a child in Merton. And I'm sad to hear that, because I think particularly, I mean, it shouldn't just be about being compared to other boroughs, but I think compared to other boroughs, I think we do a pretty good job of treating cases fairly and doing fair assessments. There's lots of other boroughs that kind of say no to assess quite early on and so on. And I think we're doing more and more work with our schools to help them to support children at SEN support. So I'm glad that you recognise it's better in the past, but I suppose I'm frustrated if you feel like it still feels like a fight, because I don't think anything should feel like a fight when you're a parent. It should be about, you know, collaboratively working for what's best for your families.
We are just on that point. We have been liaising with Nick Flesher, who's Merton School Improvement Officer, and he manages the Senko forums, and we have had parent representation talking at those Senko forums. And instead of us attending the next one, he wants to do a small piece of work with us and meet with families, with himself and with Senkos, to talk about just this, actually, early identification of students with SEN and how we can improve that and how we can improve communications. So that's something that we are currently looking into with Nick. It's not going to be this term because of everything that's going on at the moment. All our plans, lots of our plans have gone up in the air just temporarily, but I have spoken to Nick fairly recently, and it is something that we're going to get a date in the diary for, so if everyone looks out for that. But yeah,
I have been, even when I was responsible for educational children's services, I've been attending some of the meetings we've been having with all schools. Like we had one with literally, I think it was literally almost every head teacher from across Merton, about how we support them at the early identification and appropriately using SEN support and so on. So I've been involved in that for a while.
Yeah, we've also got a session coming up on SEN support, everyone. That is in July.
The 9th of July.
9th of July, yeah, with Zach Estelle. He's a solicitor and he's an expert in this field. So if you want to find out more about SEN support, I'd urge you to join that webinar, because he's been highly recommended from other parent forums. So I'm hopeful that it's going to be a really good session. Have we got any more questions? I think we've answered all the questions. And I'm not sure if anybody has any other questions they want to ask, because no one is raising their hand. So is there any more questions gone into the Q&A box? No. That seems like a good place to end the session then, if nobody else has any other questions. I would just like to say a huge thanks to Eleanor for joining us today. And we definitely will take you up on your offer, if that's okay, Eleanor, to come back and speak to us again. Maybe next term, later in the year, towards the end of the year.
Sounds great, yeah.
Who knows if we'll still be running webinars then? I think we probably will, but we just don't know. So that would be great if you could come back and give us another update. We would appreciate that. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Enjoy the long weekend that we have ahead of us. We'll do some more work offline and we'll arrange for the issues to be sent to Eleanor. Tiggy will also send round Eleanor's presentation to all our members so that you can all see it. Don't forget to send your evaluation forms back, and don't forget to tell us about your issues. Thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you
so much.
So we'll end the meeting now then, Tiggy, shall we?
Yeah.
Thanks, Eleanor. Really appreciated.
Nice to see you all.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.